Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai. In our last discourse, we heard beautiful descriptions of the Divine Mother by the Muni when asked by King Sarata and the businessman Samadhi. We'll go on now to chapter 34. The king said, O Muni, kindly narrate to me in detail now the methods how to serve and worship the goddess and the mantras that are used on such occasions. The rishi said, O king, I am now describing the method how to worship the goddess here. This leads to the fulfillment of all desires, to the liberation from one's bondage, to self-realization and the destruction of all miseries. The worshipper has to perform his bath. Then, putting on a white cloth, he will have to perform his various other ceremonies with his heart controlled, perform his archmonium ceremony and select a good auspicious site for his puja purposes. Next, he should plaster the site with cow dung and spread his sacred asan carpet, whereupon he is to take a seat with a cheerful mind and sip water from archmonium 3 times to rinse his mouth. Then he is to collect the articles for worship according to his capacity and place them duly in the respective position. He is to perform pranayama, which is regulating his breath, and then follow the Bhuta Suti, the purification of the old and the formation of the celestial body, and Jiva Suti, by which the devotee becomes the Devatamaya. He then proceeds to Marka Nisa. He is to mention then the time, date, the 10th and month of the year, and make his sankalpa, his purpose for doing his ceremonies. Then he will have to assign to the different parts of his body the different mantras duly, as well as his own mantra. Next, he is to meditate in his own body, the seat of the different devatas, and do the internal worship. He is to breathe life into the deity outside to be worshipped, as well as within himself to be meditated and worshipped upon. Then he is to do the same with the articles for worship and purify them by sprinkling them with water and proper mantras, thus removing all sources of obstacles that are likely to interfere with the act. Next, on an auspicious copper plate, he is to draw inside a 6-angled hexagonal figure with 2 triangles crossing each other with their vertexes, one upward and one below, with white sandal paste, or with 8 perfumed things, and outside this figure an octagonal figure of 8 petals. Outside this he is to draw the boundary lines. This is called the Bhupura. On each of these 8 petals he is to write each letter of the 9-letter Bij mantra, the seed mantra, and the 9 letters to the central part. Next by the mantra by which breath is infused, or by the Vedic mantra, he will have to place the yantra in the proper position and then worship the vital force in the central area and the holy seat with Pitta mantras. He will have to invoke the Devi, uttering the seed mantra over a golden plate or a figure, and carefully worship her by offering seeds and other articles duly as enunciated in the Yamala Tantra. Then he will have to perform the 6-fold worship of the Ganas in the 6 angles and worship Indra, Vajra, and the others, and thus finish the puja of the yantra. In the absence of the yantra, one will have to make a metal image of Bhagavati and worship her with the greatest caution within the mantras as expounded by Shiva in the Tantrams. Greatest caution with the mantras expounded by Shiva. The yantra is the mystical diagram used by the devotees for worship, or one may use the Vedic mantras in worshiping the deity in accordance with the prescribed rules and with his mind controlled. Then merged in meditation, one is to mutter silently the 9-letter mantra of the mother. Japa, muttering or repeating silently the mantras, is of two kinds. There's nitya, daily, and parasik, repetition of the name of the deity accompanied with burnt offerings. In the nitya japan, nitya homas are performed, and in the occasional puraskaranik japam, 1/10 of this is offered. Abhisheka, too, is 1/10 of the homa. Tarpanam is 1/10 of the abhisheka, and the feeding of the Brahmas is 1/10 of what is done in the Tarpanam. O king, thus completing the japam, one is to read daily the Chandipat, where the 3 glorious deeds of the Devi are narrated. Next, he will have to allow the deity invoked to depart to her own place. The Navratri Vratra, the 9-night vow, is next to be observed according to the proper rites and ceremonies. Hrim Shrim Klim is the mantra. In the bright fortnight of the month of Asvin or Chaitra is to be observed the fasting of the Navratri by those who desire for their own welfare. Fire ceremonies are to be offered, many in number, and mantras are to be recited, the same as in one's own mantra. Good paisam with sugar, ghee, and honey mixed is to be offered in this ceremony. Holy leaves of the bel tree or red kabari flowers or sesame seeds mixed with honey can be used in the fire ceremony. The special days for the worship of the Devi are the 8th, 9th, or 14th day of the half moon. The feeding of the Brahmins must be done on each occasion, O king. Thus the poor become wealthy, the disease get cured, and the persons that have no issue get obedient and well-qualified sons. The king, expelled from his kingdom, gets back by the grace of Mahamaya dominion over the whole earth and becomes able to destroy all those enemies of his by whom he was before vanquished when he worshipped the Devi. The persons desirous of learning get undoubtedly the learning honorably and auspiciousness provided by the worship of the Devi, and his senses become restrained. Persons of all castes, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, can become masters of all pleasures and happiness provided they worship with devotion the Devi, the preserver of the world, the Jagadatri. A man or woman, whoever performs the Navratri vow, always full of devotion, gets all the desired fruits. Whoever celebrates the holy Navratri ceremony in the bright fortnight of the moon of Ashvin, with his heart full of thoughts of the Devi, gets all his desires. O king, now I'm describing the rites and ceremonies. Here's a square raised platform. There's a square raised platform or altar is to be made according to the prescribed rules. A water jar is then placed on it with the Vedic mantras and the due rites and ceremonies. One will have to make a beautiful yantra according to the previously laid rules, and the water just to be placed on it. Then spread the beautiful yava grains all around the jar. An awning is to be erected over the altar in the place of worship, and the site is to be decorated with flowers. Lights and dupas, incense and perfumes are there to be used in the hall of the Chandika Devi. O king, the Devi is to be worshipped there morning, midday, and evening. No miserliness is to be shown in spending wealth for this purpose. Light, dupe, good presents of rice and other edibles, flowers and fruits of various kinds are to be offered in this worship to the Devi. The chanting of the hymns of the Vedas, songs and music with the various instruments are to be done, and a grand festivity is to be made. Moreover, note this carefully, that virgins, young girls, are to be worshipped duly with sandal ornaments, clothing, various edibles, sweets, scented oil, and beautiful garlands. This worship of the young girls is very essential. Thus, completing the worship of the Devi, fire ceremony is to be done duly with the mantras and other necessary articles on the 8th and 9th Titha. Lastly, the Brahmins are to be fed duly. Then the worshipper is to take his first meal after fasting on the 10th day. Then presents and various articles are to be offered to the Brahmins according to one's might and with devotion. O king, any man or any chaste woman or any chaste married woman or any chaste widow, whoever performs thus the Navratri Vratra, gets in this world all the desired fruits and enjoys all sorts of enjoyments and gets unbounded happiness, and after death goes to the highest place. And if owing to some cause or another he has to take his birth again in this world, he would be born in an excellent family and would become endowed with a good conduct and qualifications and get the unflinching devotion towards the Ambika Devi. O king, I have thus described to you the rules of the Navratri ceremony. This vow is the best of all. Highest and greatest pleasure and happiness are obtained in worshiping thus the auspicious Maya. O king, better worship Chandika duly, according to the prescribed rules. Then you will be able, by her grace, to conquer all your enemies, and you will regain your excellent dominion, unshaken by any, and you will get again the highest pleasure and happiness when you will be reunited with your wife and sons in your own place. There is no doubt in this. And Samadhi, businessman, you too better worship the same Mahamaya, the goddess of the universe, worshiping whom leads to the fructification of all desires. You will then be able to regain all your worldly pleasures in your own home and be respected by your relatives and acquaintances. And finally, after your death, you will go to the holy abode of the Devi. There is no doubt in this. Those that do not worship the Devi go to Naraka or hell. Moreover, they suffer much from various diseases in this world. Those that do not worship the Devi are always defeated by their enemies and are void of wife and sons. They become stupid and suffer pains from their unsatisfied desires. And those that worship the creatrix of the world with bell leaves, flowers, and other lovely items are the blessed people devoted to the Devi. They get filled with all sorts of enjoyments. O king, what more can I say than that those who have worshipped the Devi Bhagavan with the mantra approved by the Nikama Sastras, those very persons get honor in this world and are filled with all sorts of power and wealth. Verily, they stand foremost in the rank of best people, becoming the only repositories of all the best qualities in the world. Here ends the 34th chapter of the 5th book on the methods of the worship of the Devi in the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the Mahapuranam of 18,000 verses by Maharishi Veda Vyasa. Jai Mahamaya ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai, Vishveshwari Mata ki jai, Bole Baba ki jai.